and welcome back to the Africa Trade Conference 2021. We're very excited because we had a very engaging morning, but now we're talking about trade with Africa. It's all about global trade with Africa and the rest of the world. So I'm very excited. We have great speakers today and a couple of panel sessions. And like I said, it's all about trade with Africa. And with that, I'd like to start off real quick. We have an amazing woman who's going to be our keynote speaker this afternoon. Her name is Rachel Mwakazi-Sharp, all the way from Norway, but she's actually from Kenya. She's from the continent, and she will be talking to us about trading with Africa and the diaspora engagement. A lot of us have started to realize that in order for us to trade with the rest of the world, they need to know what is happening on the continent, and who better than the diaspora who are outside the continent who can champion this idea of more trade and investment happening in Africa so that we can ensure that we're doing development on this continent. And so with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Rachel Mwakazi so that she can share with us her amazing things that she's doing and to share with us her insights about how we can trade more with the world and how you in the diaspora can be able to engage with us Africans on the continent to make sure that development is happening. So Rachel, welcome to the Africa Trade Conference, and we can't wait, and I can't wait to hear what you have to tell us today. Thank you very much.
Hello, Anne and everybody. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much. It's always a breath of fresh air seeing you with that beautiful smile, and I'm happy for these honors of having the keynote opening for this very, very important topic as we look at trading in Africa and why diaspora engagement is very crucial. Yes, I have been a Kenyan diaspora for many years, having lived in Germany for 22 years, and thereafter Norway for 7 years. At the same time, parallelly, I've been very active in Kenya, and right now, as Anne knows, and many others, I've recently come back to Kenya fully instead of partially, because I'm running for the gubernatorial seat of Taita Taveta County in 2022. However, today I will not dwell on that because our theme for today is more on trade. And when we look at diaspora, first of all, the Kenya diaspora, we're looking at the numbers that we have. It's estimated between 3 million, and some people say it's about 4 million. So alone from that, seeing, numbers are really, really important. And again, the financial muscle that diaspora has, alone for the last 12 months, we have seen that the diaspora remittances has been whooping 360 billion, as they say. Sometimes I'm just trying to reconcile the figures in my head, and it is quite mind-blowing, but I know it is possible. And yet we are saying, when we look at these figures deeply, it's more money which is going for consumption, because the money that we remit as diasporans is basically, most of it is going maybe for our families, for medication, for school fees, for food, for really, we are like almost offering the social welfare for our families, communities. We contribute a lot, and that is quite commendable, and we should continue embracing. However, if we want, for the good of Africa, it will be good if the bigger portion goes in investments, and it doesn't mean that we are neglecting our communities of families. It's not a call to say that we reduce the money going in. I look at it as diaspora investing this money so that even the money that they remit can also, it can circulate, and it will still go back to helping their families. So we make it circulate in the economy first. And also, as my sister Anne is very, very keen on diaspora, not diaspora this time, but she is keen on generational wealth creation. who better can really foster this? Because most of us live in the country, in very developed countries, where we are saying sometimes you see the business, the company, you find it has a legacy of even some of them up to 200 years old, and you're told it was begun by the great-great-grandfather of these people. So some of these things are the ones which we can see how diaspora can lead their families who they remit to into trading. We have a great opportunity with this AFCTA, and we can trade in Africa if we want to. Already we know the loopholes. We know why some of the businesses, they don't have a loan, they're not scalable. Like when you look at the rural women, they struggle to do business, but a lot of them, they don't have a credit history, they don't have this. So we have to begin somewhere at the grassroots. And I'm saying this because I'm passionate about the welfare of rural communities. I feel it's a very huge population which depends on trading, even among small scale. So how about if we are able to bring them to a place where they can be more financially literate, and also they can have the much needed micro loans that they need to be able to start now doing it correctly. Because when we are trading with Africa, it doesn't always have to be only the big things like assembling cars and what have you. At the grassroots, it's also crucial because that's where the population is. We know that a lot of countries around the world grew because of the trade. Well, we've learned it in history, in geography, the trade routes, and now we are happy that our presidents, they really got together. And if these borders for trading can really be worked on, then this will be a big boost for Africa. So I think my friend Joy will be around in the panel, like what they're doing with Awe, which she will talk about maybe herself, but what she's doing with Awe, it is a much needed thing, this diaspora circle, which has the ability now to partner with the women, especially they said, although they're not shutting out men at the grassroots, and give them the much needed loans, because it will be much softer for these people, and it will foster more trade. At the same time, because of the exposure that we have as people who have lived outside the country, if we can partner well, because even on the ground, they have been there growing through all the challenges. So I learn a lot when I'm interacting with the people here. And because of living outside, I tend to see more opportunities than the people can see. I know this is referred to as home blindness, because even where we live, some of the opportunities we see it more than the natives. And this third eye, we can say it is really crucial for, it's needed. You know, we need a business is, if you have that eye, that you can see some opportunities. You look at things and you see, oh, I was in this country, this is the same thing, you know, and really like somewhere like Kenya, we are happy about the work that has gone into the infrastructure. It's now easier even for people like from the coast region, even from the small town of Voi, where I am, to take the SGR and go to the major city, which is really, it has reduced the cost of even traveling. So looking at the infrastructure even throughout Africa, where it's being structured, it's helping us to make it easier for us to trade. Because when we got independence, when we look at the things, one of the things which really was elusive is the means of communication, transportation, and it has taken quite a while for us to be able to build this. I say us because we are all part of it. If the government has built, it means that the people are growing, people are working, people are trading, people are remitting their taxes and everything. So I can say, you know, the infrastructure, especially in Kenya, is very conducive for business. So we are quite lucky that we can be able to do this as compared to many other countries. Now, why I find also that the diaspora is really important in these trade engagements is because diasporas, if you look at the remittances, they are very high, and they remit because they are empathic to their families, they are meeting needs through this. So we need we need people who are in entrepreneurship, who are also just social entrepreneurs, who are also not looking straight away at making millions at a go. If diaspora can start helping and seeing how even the people they've been remitting to can be integrated in trade, that they can become entrepreneurs who are more social entrepreneurs, then we will be able to make that money circulate even more, and it will be more useful to our economy. So diaspora is an indispensable partner. In one of my theses, I asked the question if diaspora is remittances, are they a sleeping pill or a development catalyst? Yeah. I couldn't answer that question so well myself because it was actually both. The way we want to take it is the way it's going to be. As of now, if we will continue remitting like we are doing, we are just fostering it to be a sleeping pill because we are actually doing work which should be done by government of taking care of its people and the hospital things so that there is enough medicine and everything, because it is a bit like us who can afford to give our families back some of the money for hospital or something. What about the people who don't have diasporas and the majority don't have? So it means we really have to look at it, at things crucially. I view our remittances as a hugely, highly potential development catalyst because, again, it is our country and we want for the good of it. And when we put money inside this economy, we don't necessarily take it out. It circulates here, we bank it here, we use it here, it can be used much more here. So because I was honored to do the keynote speech, and I know I wouldn't like to talk too much and touch on all the points of the other people so that I don't end up saying things which people have specifically prepared to say, because I know it is a very powerful panel that you have right now, and I will be happy to welcome you all to share with us. Thank you so much, Anne. Let me just stop there and leave it open for dialogue afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for really sharing with us and connecting the dots, why trade in Africa is connected to the diaspora, what it is that the diaspora can do, and what it is that us on the continent can do. I like the fact that you talked about diaspora. Is it a sleeping pill or a development catalyst? And it's about what it is that you look at it, because again, you can either support people to do better, or you can make sure that you're just making them do the same old things. And because we're all about change in Africa and making sure that we are trading, then this is definitely an important discussion that we can look into. I think before we go to our next panel, I think the question that I would have for you, Rachel, you being in the diaspora, you coming back home and running for office and saying that you would like to see change happening from a policy perspective. What is it that you think needs to be done in regards to trade policy that will not only help the larger businesses, but will actually support the SMEs that you champion, the women and the youth-run business and men business that are SMEs that are majority on the continent, the startups, the SMEs who have challenges in regards to access to market, access to capital, and the capacity to do these things. What is it that you see from a trade policy perspective that needs to be done? And what is it that the diaspora can do, or diaspora returnees like you and me? What is it that we can do practically so that we make sure this happens?
I think practically we really need to review what is already there, because looking at the situations, I'm trying to find out why actually are things so choked. I must say that Kenya, in every area, even with this devolution, they have done a really good job in actually putting policies in place, in actually even a very progressive constitution. So some of the things, it will actually be implementing them. Because you look at a lot of things, you see they are really well thought. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to make sure that actually they are translated into action, that they are ready, that they are adapted, and they can start functioning. Because it looks like most of the things people are seeing, they are on paper, yeah, but in practice, they are not there. Because when I'm looking, I'm thinking, wow, this is so wonderful, this is so good, but like we say in Kenya, lakini kwa ground vitu ni tofauti. Yeah, when you're reading these things, you see it's already there. You know, like I'm an ambitious person, and I love. I'm very solution oriented, and I love looking at things and seeing what actually is choking this thing. Why can't it be? And then I'm there busy thinking what can be done, and then I go and read, and I find actually it's already there. It's just that people are so busy arguing in politics and doing God knows what instead of serving the people. So I plan to look very clearly at the issue of SMEs, because one of the things which we are seeing in some of the places, actually the costs of even running the businesses, you see, like most of the SMEs, they're not even apart from the license, they're not even bankable. They don't want even to put their money in the bank. Yeah, they're scared. Yeah, KRA, because I've been talking to people, and you know, Anne, this causes them not to. There's a lot of money which goes back. There are a lot of angel investors out there who would be able to hold the hand of these businesses if at least they even had a credit history. So we really have to start at the grassroots and do quite allocate a way of doing even the civic education that it is broad enough to take some of the people who are struggling with small businesses, because a lot of people are just surviving. I'm telling you, women I met at the market selling bananas and oranges, some of them are still old and alive and still there, moving around. Yeah, still selling the same thing. I promise you, some of these people were there when I was in high school, and they're still struggling in business for selling vegetables. Their businesses have not grown 20 years, 30 years later. So what is the problem? Yeah, so it means that there are areas where either they have not been taught business education, because strangely enough, I've been asking people, I say, go around, especially this past month, trying to tell the people, you know, to register, why it's important for them to vote, and also with this COVID thing, telling the people why it's important to get their jobs. At the same time, you're asking people, so what do you do for a living? Yeah, how many are at work? There's no hand which goes up. And when I say work, I'm asking them at the end of the month, you have a salary, yeah, you have maybe a pay slip, you're paying taxes, and there's no hand which goes up in many places. And so even when you find one hand going up, you're almost clapping and, you know, hugging. You ask them how many have ever worked in their life, because probably they have been working and retrenched. You will find people who are 40, 45, 50, they have never had a job. Yeah, and these are a lot of people. Who is in business, they don't put their hand up. Who is then a farmer, they don't put their hand up. They're still struggling with subsistence. But at the same time, you know that they have called you maybe to a group, because they have a women's group that maybe is making their baskets, like the case of Taita. But when you ask for business, people, their hand doesn't go up because they don't take it as a business. It is more of a pastime activity. In fact, I've been asking them, so the things which you're doing, you're not selling, is it a hobby? No, we sell them. So you have to remind them to bring them out and start telling them, you know what, take advantage when visitors are coming. You have to display your wares. You have to see how, we have to see how we make education that helps them even to get into the digital spaces, because some of their things are really, really good. They're the things which we see them use as sold even in abroad and everywhere. So such a woman with such things, if she's not connected, when will she doesn't even know about she trades. Yeah, she will never be in those, you know, in those places, and yet they are made for people like them. So we have to see how all these opportunities can really come right to the grassroots so that people are aware of them. If we have to have it regional, that they are taught in their language until they understand, we need to do it because this is a very huge population. If they can do business right and stop doing these survivalist businesses, we can really also participate in economic recovery of our country. Thank you.
Great. So I hear your passion for the women. I hear your passion for Taita Taveta and Kenya. And that, of course, grows into Africa. And one of the things you were talking about is education. And that's what the Regular Africa Business Institute is all about. How do we give the right information to people so that they can participate in intra-Africa trade and global trade? And how do we support them? Because as you say, the government and the policies are in place, but implementation is not coming about. But I think that is where I need you to sort of give us solutions about the diaspora. The diaspora, you're in Norway, there's somebody in Senegal, somebody in Botswana who has products that can go into Norway. How can you in the diaspora facilitate so that we're exporting to the rest of the world? How can you as diaspora be able to provide the right funding so that businesses on the continent can get affordable funding so that they can then be able to trade, access to trade finance, access to working capital? How does the diaspora come in? And then last but not least, I would like you to actually share around capacity building. If you've been in the diaspora, you know how to do things right. I keep talking about we need to move from informal to a formal economy because that is how we will grow our businesses and how we'll be able to trade on the continent and beyond. How does the diaspora engage with the businesses that are doing locally and say, this is how you run a business, right? This is how you run processes of the business, marketing, finance, keeping your books, all these things that you need to do so that then I can help you be able to access market and funding. From your perspective, what can the diaspora do? And how do we speak to our various business people and traders on the continent so that they can take it up? Because remember, this conference is all about empowering us as Africans to participate in trade.
Yes. Okay, I think I have made a case to say that the rural communities are the ones which are really left behind in this, because most of the business people, it is much more easier to connect with them directly, yeah? But the small SMEs, the challenge actually comes with the suspicion with the diaspora. Actually, with all the goodwill that the diaspora has, they are facing the challenge of some people see the diaspora, I don't know, as if they are competing to be recognized in a space that they did not build. I clearly see some people behave like you are the ones who left us here. We're the ones who have remained here and built this country without realizing how big a role diaspora remittances again have played, because the reason in the first place we moved out of the country is because we were looking for greener pastures, and we did not go there and keep it to ourselves. So now that left aside, because we dwelled on monetary remittances, one big thing that is missing out of the ground is, like we have talked about shortly, it's about the education. So diaspora can actually play a very big role by skills transfer, so that it is no longer this skills and knowledge transfer, so that it's no longer what was before, that when we go out and we are maybe we got education here and went and continued there, that it is brain drain. Now we can have a brain gain because of the digital spaces. We can actually train a lot of people online. I'm saying this because I have done it practically while seated in Norway and training women in the remote region of Taita Taveta at a place called Mbulia, where I had to put even the needed living infrastructure in place, teach the women how to use their small the telephones digitally, and then next how to get on Zoom, and from there we could be able to learn. And as a community development practitioner, I was able to, I understand the concepts. So I have been teaching them like from scratch, helping them even to realize the resources they have, because that is another thing. The people need to be cognizant of what is there, what is in their hands, because sometimes people give you far-fetched ideas. If you tell them to write a proposal of what they can do, they copy-paste. A lot. People go online, get this and just copy paste, and of course you can see what is copy pasted, yeah. But if you bring them back to a simple exercise as saying, tell me what you find in your region, what is outside in your compound, and just that way you are able to show the women, for example, that there is an opportunity with the, for example, baobab powder and the baobab oil, which is on demand in many places. So because we could not, because there was nobody we found who was doing this trade in that area, I had to take up that challenge of teaching them even how to produce, of making them even be able to make the instruments, the machine they will use by themselves, yeah, so that I can bring them closer to cottage industries. Of course, that I can only do small scale at the beginning, but again, I taught them well so that they can go and replicate it. And we are happy that it is being copied by other people. Now people have suddenly discovered, oh, looking at baobab in a different eye, something which Senegal, which you have mentioned, already did. You know, you go to the shops, you will find the baobab product from Senegal, from where Madagascar, it's known for its beauty, the tree is a little bit different. But then here, people thought it was monkey food, apart from making the candy that is popular, which you just eat, spit out the seeds, and that very seed also has a value. So I will answer your question by saying, you know, we will need to get the diaspora to continue to carry out this job of skills transfer. And also, I have to mention a project which I really find is really good. That is from more of a governmental level, what Germany and other countries did when they introduced this WIDO funds. It fascinated me because it was a partnership between the diaspora living, the government there, the diaspora living there, and their families at the grassroots. And it was very much a business development model and how it can be done. But it was only successful because it was both parties. The diaspora voice was heard in how some of the challenges are and how it can be done. And these are the partnerships we need. You know, we need at a county level in a country like Kenya, where the devolution is good. So we need now the leaders who are there at a county level, yeah, governors and these people, they need to embrace the diaspora. Diaspora is a very, very crucial investment partner. There is no other partner that counties are going to get that is more genuine than the diaspora. That's why I can say it confidently, because if schools are built properly, if we can invest in the schools, in the hospitals, in trades, that people have can earn a living, if our brothers and sisters at the ground can get jobs, we will also be able to develop ourselves in the diaspora, because right now there are lots of Kenyans in the diaspora who cannot really even advance their education because they have to run from job to job in order to sustain their families. But if we can make our families self-reliant, yeah, if we can teach good business and start creating generational wealth, I will not have to send all my remittances here. It means I can pay for my courses there, and I can also participate in building, yeah, the economy and the and thinking of how also to make my host country better, because we cannot be there just, you know, taking, and we can't even participate even in community activities because our mind is just building our country and ignoring also the nations that we live in. So we just need a better understanding. I would long for good dialogue between diaspora and county governments. So that would really go a long way.
Okay, thank you again for sharing your insights. What I got from you, it's beyond remittances. We need to have skills and knowledge transfer and access to markets also. One of the stories and why I thought everyone needs to listen to you is really what you've done practically. I always say business and trade is all about practical, whereby you're in Norway and on your computer, you're training people in Taita Taveta. You're actually teaching them about the farming, taking the baobab, the mabuyu, and actually exporting them. You've been very practical. And that is what the diaspora can do, which is not only giving money, but also the skills and knowledge, because knowledge is power, but also access to markets, to the export market, because you do know your host country and you do know the country that you're from in Africa. And with that information, can be able to transform this continent and grow more trade on the continent. Because now you need to think, okay, if I'm to get this particular product, I can get it in Kenya, I can get it in Ivory Coast, I can get it in Tunisia, right? And be able to build a brand all over that. Okay, so Rachel, thank you very much for sharing with us your insights. We really appreciate it. And I know a lot of people will have a good takeaway about being practical. Be practical in business, get government involved, and support the private sector. Thank you very much, Rachel. So with that, I would like to go in to our next panel. So our next panel, we do have our moderator, Wangeci Gitata-Kiriga, who will be discussing about global trading agreements and opportunities that Africans can take up. I do see that some of the panelists are there, but before Wangechi comes in, I would like us to just play a short video about trade with Africa, because that's the session that we're in, and then we will start on with the panel discussion. So if you could just play the video of trade with Africa, then we can go ahead and start the discussion. All right, thank you. So go ahead and welcome Wangechi, our moderator for the session. Thank you for joining us and being part of the Africa Trade Conference. Go ahead, Wangechi.
Thank you so much, Anne, and welcome everybody to the afternoon session that was kicked off so wonderfully by Rachel Mwakazi, our future excellency. Yeah, we're all going to be gunning for you, Madame. So we really hope that you end up becoming that governor of your county here in Kenya. But as we talk about today's session, I'm really excited about all the panelists that I have with me. I have Sara Ashour, who is an analyst from Egypt. I have Doug, whose name I've been practicing, so you have to hear it. His name is Doug Bruhnke. And Doug is the founder of the Global Chamber. He's based in the US. And we also have Olivier Musafiri, who is a project manager for Africa, and he's with TFO-Canada. So we're going to be talking about the global trading agreements and what do we really see as opportunities that Africans can take up because there are these trading agreements that are going on. We've heard the whole day today about what the Africa Continental Free Trade Area means for us as a continent. But even when we go beyond that and we go beyond what it means to trade as a bloc, if we're looking not just at intra-Africa trade, but global trade where Africa is trading as a unified bloc with the rest of the world. Those are the opportunities that we would really like to hear about. The people on my panel today, I hope you've got a chance to look at their different bios, but I did say that I was going to tell you a little bit about them before they come on. They'll tell us a little bit more about their work, but on a little bit more of a personal note, Olivier, for example, speaks so many different languages. He's the linguist with his English, his Kiswahili, his French. French was certainly not for me. It did not work. I was distracted. We had a young, gorgeous teacher, so French didn't work. We kept looking at her fashion instead of learning the language. Doug Bruhnke is also a mountaineer like myself. He's climbed a couple of mountains in Japan as well as in the US. He's hiked the Appalachian Trail, which is 3,500 kilometers long. And we were just exchanging stories as we were preparing for this, because on my end, I've done Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya as well. Sara has the view of multiculturalism as her lens, because she grew up in South. She spent some time in South Korea. She spent some time in Germany. She grew up in Kuwait and the UK. She's visited all these different countries across the continent. And so, and that's Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya. Yes. Morocco, and because of that, whenever she's looking at the analysis that she's doing, that's the kaleidoscope that she looks through, and we're really grateful for that worldview in the things that she's coming across and how she interprets what it is that we're looking at. So I'd like to start with Sara to go ahead and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing as a trade and policy analyst, and how the work that you're doing fits into these opportunities that we're seeing that Africa and her nations can take up in all these different trade agreements that are out there. So Sara, please go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a problem with my connection.
No worries, you're there. Go ahead.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Sara Ashour, and I'm a trade policy analyst at the Egyptian Ministry of Trade and Industry. I'm currently, my areas of specialization are mainly trade agreements, rules of origin, and trade facilitation. I've worked on other development issues and with non-governmental and governmental organizations, especially focusing on women's rights, health rights, and children's rights. I'm very glad to be here today and looking forward for the fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Sara. And then we're going to go ahead and hear from Olivier. Olivier, if you could please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about TFO-Canada.
Thank you so much, Wangechi. Good afternoon and good morning. Depends on where you are. I'm based here in Ottawa. Olivier Musafiri, as you mentioned earlier. Yes, I do speak Swahili, originally from Congo, so my Swahili is a little bit different from the Nairobi one. And I'm the project manager with TFO-Canada in charge of English-speaking countries in Africa. Currently, we have projects in 15 countries in Africa. And Kenya is one of the countries that we are covering under the Women in Trade for Inclusive and Sustainable Growth. TFO-Canada really mission is to support our developing countries to boost their international trade, and mostly focusing on small and medium enterprises, where most of our target population is women-owned businesses. So I'm happy to be here representing TFO-Canada, and thanks to Anne Gaeta for the invitation, and looking forward really to discuss how trading agreement can be a good opportunity for the trade in general, but mostly looking at the women in particular. Thanks.
Thank you. And you know, it goes very much in line with some of the discussions that are going to be had tomorrow, where they are really going to be focusing specifically on trade as a gendered issue, right? I think Rachel also talked about that in her remarks just now, about the fact that, you know, you do have all of these different cross-border traders that are there. You have, you know, these women who are weaving as part of almost a hobby, but yet this is something that that can actually bring about income to their households and improve their livelihoods. And when such markets, export markets, are opened up to even to MSMEs, it makes all the difference. So we'd really, really be keen to hear, Olivier, how TFO works even with small groups. You did mention that you do work with some MSMEs, but also how are those smaller businesses, those micro businesses, how do those get linked up into global value chains? And how do these agreements sort of help them get there? So if you could just keep that in mind and answer that question for me when we come back to you. We'll give Doug Bruhnke a moment to introduce himself, tell us a little bit more about the Global Chamber, and maybe just a little bit about why you decided to found it, Doug, because I do know that you're the CEO, but you're also the founder of the Global Chamber. So let's hear a little bit more about that, Doug.
Thank you, Wangechi, and thank you so much for working so hard on pronouncing my name. You did a great job, really, really excellent. I feel very positive about what's happening in Africa today around trade. I start with the fundamental belief that trade is good, that it creates wealth, and it, especially on the export side, it brings money back that can be used for roads, education, and it creates a very positive cycle through that education of trading, training more people to become involved with trading. I was inspired, not necessarily in a positive way, to start Global Chamber because I felt there were many problems with trade. Many companies can fail. There is an underappreciation typically for trade in most countries, and my starting point was exporters in the US. Only 12% of GDP in the US is exporting. Only 1 in 100 companies export. And I saw that as a lost opportunity. And so I was wondering how to improve that. And since I'm what I call part of the global tribe, more than just an American, I'm originally, my family is from Poland and Germany. I have traveled to 60 countries plus. I've lived in Japan and Singapore and spent most of my career in Asia through the DuPont company, polymers and chemicals and things like that. I'm originally a chemical engineer turned Globie. From all of that, I felt like there was an opportunity to improve things. And so I started Global Chamber chapters everywhere so that whoever in Africa, whatever country, whatever city, anywhere in the world wants to grow, the training is available, the contacts are available, and what we do is connect people every day to new clients. So I'll stop there, but I do believe in trade. I do believe that the AFCFTA is a key, very positive, huge step in the future. Having been involved with trade for 34 years, my first trip to South Korea was 34 years ago. I've had the benefit of history and seeing where South Korea and China were 34 years ago, not very far. And so they've made huge progress and come a long way. And I believe the same thing will become for Africa. And so hopefully I'll be around for 34 more years and see the benefits of all of this. So thank you for the opportunity to you and to Anne and to all the organizers. And I look forward to the conversation today.
Thanks for that, Doug. And you're right. If you look at the countries that you've lived in, that change, that sort of like, very, very steep rise in GDP and, development, to use that word, in the more strict sense, the speed with which that has happened, especially in the Asian countries, has been in a very short amount of time, and we are looking at this continental free trade area mixed in with the fact that we are looking at the world's youngest population. I mean, the average age of Africa is 21. I'm one of the outliers who are bringing up the average. So we are a very young continent, and one that is also very digitally savvy. If you look at the penetration rate of what we have as far as mobile phones are concerned, right now we're looking at we're projected to be at 636 million by 2022. I mean, by 2022, we'll be at 636 million people who have smartphone connections across the continent by next year. And this is even twice the number of projected users in a continent like North America. So, there are all these exciting things we've heard today, all about, the future of digital trade and e-commerce and all this connectivity that is taking place. So let's talk a little bit more about how we can tap into those, especially when it comes to intra-Africa trade. And my first question is going back to Sara. Egypt, from what we're seeing from the African Union, the data that they've given us, Egypt is in the top 3, both for exports intra-Africa and also for imports intra-Africa, which is fantastic because usually you don't have that happening both ways like that. I think the only other one that is doing a bit of both in a similar sense is South Africa. So my question to you was this a deliberate policy decision where Egypt has said, we really want to trade within the continent? Or is it something that sort of has happened organically based on what it is that Egypt is focusing on for their domestic agenda?
Okay, thank you so much. So I would say that indeed it was a deliberate thing, at least for the last 10 years, especially when we assumed the AU presidency in 2019. It has been very crucial, and it has mainstreaming African integration has been a huge part in most of the policies and in annual strategies for ministries or cabinets. I would say that if you also examine the history of Egypt joining regional agreements, if you go back to the COMESA or the Agadir agreement combining North African countries, you see that Egypt has been very keen to join from the beginning of actually setting out the agreement. But the thing is that with the ACFTA as well, there is a lot of interest in order to increase, the local value addition. These agreements have been there for a long time, but our question is always, why do people don't use them so much as we need and as we want? Maybe in the last 10 years, we've been focusing so much on public-private partnerships and cooperation with international organizations in order to properly educate our business communities. And because the main thing that we always hear, and being a rules of origin geek, that many businesses complain that some provisions are not understandable. If you want to do cumulation in order to be more integrated in global value chain, cumulation is needed. So as a government and as in what we do now is we try to simplify such provision for business community in order to make it more understandable for either big producers or small ones, because small SMEs contribute a huge part of our economy. So yes, it has been deliberate for a long time, but even with the statistics that you say, we dream much that we make the utility for such agreements more. That is what we want, the Africa we want, that we always say.
Well, thank you for that. What you did mention, the fact that, rules of origin sometimes get in the way, just in terms of their complexity, and businesses are not always able to respond, and they don't know where the opportunities lie, especially because of some of these different rules that are there. So, keeping that in mind, how are these rules going to be different within the continental free trade area? Do you think they'll be different? And is there a way that you can, that you foresee being able to get over, I guess, that hurdle? Or is there a way that they can be simplified so that they can be taken up faster, given the experience that you've already had with following these, whether it's within COMESA or whether it's within the North African states? Are there things that are going to be done differently with the continental free trade area based on the experience that, that Egypt has had being part of these other regional blocs?
So my answer for this would be twofold. First, on the text level and on the implementation level. On the text level, we would say that the ACFTA has been a new generation of agreements that we could say that it has been negotiated during the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. And the good thing is that it has been learning from the lessons of other agreements in the continent. Of course, we do have the African tripartite, which is not enforced for now, but even negotiating that agreement that is not enforced, but also combines a lot of African countries in the region, have taught us a lot of lessons of what would work and what would not work. Mm-hmm. So that is the good part in the ACFTA, that it tried to come out with the good lessons from the past agreements. Most of the negotiators who were there were keen to do that, whether in Egypt or in other countries. But also on the implementation level, we're trying to reach another point, is that we try to simplify it more. We try to reach out for business community more. Maybe today's realities facilitate for us as maybe public servants or even trade analysts anyway, to try to reach out to business community through digital platforms and the databases online, to simplify the rules in a way. We try to do handbooks that give examples on how to calculate such content values or whatever. But also it's one thing which is very important, and on a personal basis, I wish that it would be implemented on the ACFTA, is the accumulation provision. We always put that in all of our agreements, but at the end, the usage of such provision is very minimal. But I guess in my interpretation, that would be a key for actually upgrading ourselves in the global value chains and being involved in the complex value chains rather than the simple value chains. I really wish for that. In Africa, we do have different interpretation for accumulation because, there's different kinds of accumulation. But what we seek now is that we try to simplify such notions more. We try to reach out to African partners to have common understanding so we could actually be on the same page when we do the implementation very soon.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And sort of going back to this idea of, opening up new markets. Olivier, I'm going to turn to you next and ask you how this works within some of these services that TFO-Canada provides. I was looking at the website and I saw that they have something that's being called Exporter Market Entry Services. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how that particular service is open to, or how it works, let me put it that way, with African businesses? Are there opportunities there for African businesses to trade with Canada? Olivier?
Thank you so much, Wangechi. Really, TFO-Canada is looking to help, especially the MSMEs, as you have mentioned earlier. So what we do, one is really to build the capacity. So before we start any kind of activities, we do conduct local market research to understand what are the issues, what are the trends, what are the current market, and what are the targeted markets. So when we after finding the targeted market, of course, Canada being one of the target market that most of the countries are looking, and we do have more services, as you can see on Trade Facilitation Office Canada website. So we help them to understand what are the regulations in order to meet the Canadian market. But we also have free services that anyone can get through the website. It's after registering to our website, everyone is in touch or is able to access the Canadian importers database. So you can see who is importing the product that you are looking to export to Canada. So then you can start your own communication with them so that you can really see what are the opportunities they have, what are you able to offer, and how are you going to work together. So that's kind of opportunities that lies there, and for everyone who is really looking to trade with Canada, and they're able to access that big database that is really a good part of the services that we offer. But also part of the group that we kind of target as part of the project, beyond of giving them the opportunity to go through different series of trainings, we do have what we call the MBA studies. We select those who have already started conversation with buyers, or those who have not seen exactly the importers who are matching their needs. Then we can engage the MBA student here in Canada to conduct a very thorough studies of how these products are going to get market into Canadian market. So that becomes an opportunity for them really to see through how they're going to do. And of course, one of the challenges to see how they're going to expand the market within Canada. One, we have to understand that, yes, we have a very big diaspora, and I was listening to Rachel, how she was mentioning the importance of diaspora on building the economy back home. So even when we look at importing some of these products, let's say into the agro-food product, we also rely on diaspora. Yeah, if we look at Canada, probably Montreal becomes one of the big targets. The Toronto becomes another target. So we want the MBA studies to really focus on those high spot areas where we can understand why they want to buy that sort of product, and then we help those SMEs to do that. But also bring the SMEs to participate in trade missions, part of the services that we offer, so they can come and participate. Some of the trade missions kind of market familiarization, where they can come and visit big stores to see how the products are kind of different, or what they need to prepare in advance before they can start exporting to Canada. So basically, those are the opportunities we have, but we are now expanding more. And of course, with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area coming into force since January, so we are seeing this more becoming an opportunity within the continent itself. So our services now are not only just looking at this international market outside Africa, but how do we help the SMEs to really take opportunity of this new market, very exciting opportunity, and especially looking at the women. How do we boost that opportunity into that big number of SMEs that are trading, especially cross-border has been one of the majorities of the trade practices within Africa. And when you look at cross-border trade, women still become the majority. And with my experience prior to joining TFO-Canada or coming to Canada, I used to work with the UN Women in Great Lakes region, where I was covering the women in cross-border trade in Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC. So we have seen this kind of trends coming. And recently I was working in South Sudan, and we can see how Kenya and Uganda are still trading so much with South Sudan. So how do we see this as an opportunity, and how do we help the MSMEs to understand how to really trade, not just as an informal part of business, but making it a formal business, where now they can really trade with these neighboring countries as the trend continues to grow, and building that capacity. Most of the issues that we have been seeing recently with the COVID coming is digital literacy. So we want to make sure that women and MSMEs in general are really tapping into digital literacy. And of course, M-Pesa has been one of the solutions for the business in East Africa and in Africa in general. So how do we see this kind of opportunities as we build the capacity of MSMEs to tackle issues of trade and exporting, when literacy now is becoming a solution, when we are buying raw materials from the suppliers? How do we really continue to work with our partners across the continent? And in the case of Kenya, we are working with the KEPROBA as a government institution, but we are expanding the services not only in one spot, but we are looking at different high spot areas where trade is happening. But really, that's what TFO-Canada is doing, and we are seeing a lot of changes, and of course with different stakeholders across the continent, and the women movement really tapping into that to make the Africa Continental Free Trade Area as an opportunity for them and be the forefront of this new market.
Well, thank you for that, Olivier, because what you spoke about, is quite practical. So if I heard you correctly, you're telling us that MSMEs, and especially women, should really look at formalization, because once they get formalized, then they're able to tap into these different opportunities, whether they're for capacity building, and whether that capacity building is looking at these different markets, and especially export markets, but also being able to tap into other opportunities, perhaps around digital trade. And that digital trade is, of course, building on the existing infrastructure that's there, the payment systems, etc. But what I would also want to hear from you is, how are these groups selected? Are they sort of self-selected? Do they just reach out to the different Canadian embassies that are in their countries? Is it a particular program that you're running with different arms of the Canadian government and perhaps with local partners? Walk us a little bit through that before we jump in and talk to Doug, because what I do want to hear from Doug is how you take this information and turn that into the warm leads that the Global Chamber is known for. So Doug, if you could just hold that thought and tell us a little bit more about how the warm leads work, because what I'm hearing from Olivier is that, yes, you do get access to a directory. You do have access to importers, let's say within Canada, but how do you sort of build that network of business relations? And before you get there, how does TFO help you when you're in country to figure this bit out? So Olivier, if you could just walk us a little bit, you could give an example from one of the countries in which you're doing something, how you're tapping into these groups, these MSMEs, and how you're linking them into these global value chains.
Thank you so much, Wangechi, for that question. Really, as I mentioned, with the 15 countries in Africa, and I'm happy to see Sara, Ashour part of this panel, because Egypt is now one of our another target countries currently. We haven't started a project, but we are also looking at Egypt to be one of the country on board. I can use one of the example of Ethiopia. Ethiopia, we have 2 projects. And out of those 2 projects, we have four partners. Some of them are non-profit organizations or civil society organizations that are really working to support MSMEs into their businesses. And one of the partners is the Ministry of Trade. So we, as TFO-Canada, we receive funding from the Global Affairs Canada, which is the entity for Government of Canada. And now we implement the project through our partners on the ground. So we don't have a selection process from TFO-Canada, but our partners comes with their members. Some of them is a member-based organization. Others is like a government, like a Ministry of Trade. So based on the SMEs that they are working with, they are the one to be selected. And of course, based on the sectors, like in Ethiopia, one of the partners is only focusing on agro-food. The other 3 partners are working on apparel textile sectors. So when we look at the MSMEs, we look at the sector that has been assigned to each partner, and we look at the members that are based within that institution. After selecting, then we do support them, but it's all kind of right to say that the partners are the one to bring the SMEs or the MSMEs, as you have call them, so that even beyond the project, they can continue to support them. We don't want to have TFO-Canada stepping in, because there is kind of a limitation in terms of accompanying SMEs on day-to-day, but also the sustainability. We want to make sure that what we are doing lies in the hand of the partners. We are doing capacity building for the institution level and the capacity building for the SMEs. So like recently we have completed training of trainers on export readiness for all partners across continents. Now we have trainers who are certified within each partner organization who will be now training the SMEs. Of course, we have experts who are going to be accompanying these newly certified trainers, but this becomes as building the capacity within the institution, but also assuring that there is sustainability beyond. If we are targeting, in one of the projects, we are targeting 112 MSMEs to be trained, and we are targeting in each country at least 50 SMEs to be participating in trade missions. But there are more MSMEs who are still looking for that kind of opportunities. So that's why we want to make sure that our partners have that resource to continue building the capacity of these SMEs. But as I mentioned also, right, TFO being there for that, our website continue to give them that same opportunities where they can link up with Canadian importers. And of course, the trade mission becomes another opportunity, like Dubai 2020. Yes. Some of the partners have been there already. So the lesson learned from that continues to support the SMEs moving forward.
Okay, thank you. That's been really comprehensive, and I do appreciate that. And the fact that you've given us really practical examples. And, you know, Doug, you started our discussion with saying that trade is good, and we've seen that happening. It's the thing that that makes countries move forward and improve livelihoods. It's the thing that's going to get us to those SDGs by 2030. Trade needs to continue to take place, and the private sector has a huge, huge, huge role to play. And that's what you're doing with the Global Chamber, is making those trade connections. Could you tell us a little bit more about how I was looking at your website and you talk about, warm leads, which is very different from, from some of what Olivier mentioned to us, where yes, you do have access to information, you do have access to a directory, but it's not a warm lead. People do business with people that they know. So how does the chamber help you get to know people in the new market that you're trying to get into?
I think this kind of gets wrapped into the overall issue of transparency and the value of transparency that trade brings. I'll start with that question, and I'll build it out so that hopefully the other aspects of trade can be well understood, and we can all be working more aligned. On the transparency side, to have warm leads, you need trust. You need to know people that are good. And so when someone, for instance, introduced a lawyer, Nihi Sanusi from Throne Legal in Lagos, Nigeria, to us, I actually had the pleasure of connecting with him and then doing an onboarding as a new member the other day. And I could clearly see that he is professional, honest, ethical, in all of his mannerisms, the way he emails, the way he talks, the way he's humble. These are all things that are amazing about the best of the global tribe. And so when we meet these people and continue to build our database, those become the backbone of warmth, that we know and are confident that by making an introduction to a potential client or to a resource, we have the confidence. And if there's something that happens in the meantime that doesn't incite the confidence, then we get involved. So that's a key part of trust and our network. But more broadly, the issue of trade and transparency is so critical, I think, for the world. And some of the examples I would say is that we're seeing, for instance, Nigeria now really not as participant or as moving as fast as they really need to, but that will change. What happens in these trade agreements is issues come up along the way, and there are power structures that don't want change. They don't want to disrupt what's around. But ultimately what happens is each country will become much more knowledgeable about what makes sense for my country. So SMEs look at opportunities. Wow, what are opportunities, different price points, different skills by country. And instead of every country trying to do everything, there's the benefit of countries now handling different parts of that. And a great example of that would be within the USMCA, what was called NAFTA, Mexico, US, Canada agreement, over 20, 30 years now. In the beginning, there were all sorts of battles and struggles, and now it's a well-oiled machine. It's a mega region. And one example of how that works would be 15 or so years ago, Mexico saw that there was an opportunity to have what's called nearshoring IT services into the US. So a lower cost IT talent in Mexico servicing US companies because it would be less expensive. The problem was there wasn't a pipeline of IT students. So some industrious SMEs and entrepreneurs said, well, let's work with the universities and build the talent pool to be able to supply that. So it took first, several years of, it takes 4 years to go through college, right? You've got to have the idea and the mindset. So it all begins with transparency. What are the opportunities? Second, how do we take advantage of it? In this case, let's get more students interested in IT in Mexico, which they did. Takes time, over 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Now, after 15 years, that's a huge industry for Mexico into the US, and it's a huge export. So these kinds of things through this transparency become apparent. So if you're an SME, keep your eyes open because these things will come up. If you're in the government, help your country, help your SMEs move things along, knock down barriers, remove corruption, remove all the things that are in the way of trade. It's really critically important. And if you're with a university or if you're in any of the ecosystems, you got to work together because it all starts with education and training, and it all works together in harmony. All of the success stories that I'm aware of over the last 30 years have required the connection between industry, universities, and government working together. And the more that happens in a positive way, the better it results in. One last point I wanted to make, and this is a really key point that I think I've noticed in Clubhouse. I try to make this point all the time in the Africa Clubhouse rooms. We talk about exporting, and Sara mentioned about upgrading in the value chain, also critically important, not just raw materials, but keep the wealth within the country, build it up in manufacturing, and add wealth and value within the country. Really, really important. But another thing to think about is foreign direct investment is absolutely critical. In Africa, China has kind of disrupted things because you think, and I think, China has not necessarily done all the right things in terms of how they've foreign direct invested. But look what's happened in the US and in other countries, and I'll give you a data point. In the US, only 5% of US companies are foreign owned, 5%. They account for 20% of US exports. So what happens is these companies come in, typically, and excluding the China case, right? What we want to do in Africa, I think, is attract the right kind of foreign direct investment that will make product, technology, et cetera, and then ultimately also then export. So there's a strong link, or should be, between foreign direct investment and exporting. We want typically foreign direct investment as long as it's the right kind. So I wanted to make that point as well, because it's an ecosystem. It all works together.
Absolutely. And actually, the whole FDI thing is a bit of a sore spot for me, because I think that some of these benefits that are given to FDI should actually be opened up to local companies as well, where you're given a timeline that allows you to cumulatively invest that kind of money in the local economy. Because it's just because it's not coming in as one lump sum doesn't mean that it's not going to make a difference. And anyway, so that continues to be a policy discussion here locally in Kenya. But it's a
big topic, right? In terms of how a country should structure it. But I think there's no question that foreign direct investment is key. Each country needs to decide what to do with it. When you look at South Korea and China, both of those countries developed, even Japan to a large extent, developed without a lot of foreign direct investment. They did it by really focusing effort, creating some imbalances and giving their companies advantages around their exporting and supporting them. And so it really, you bring up a really good point. And one that I totally agree with. Each country needs to have its own strategy, and we have a role in that. I know in Africa and many governments, it's hard to have that conversation, and there's a lot of other factors going on. But I think over the next 10, 20, 30 years, it's critical that we all, within our own countries, get involved in that process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think that, yes, foreign investment is good, but we need the right kind that will not necessarily repatriate all the profits out. But exactly. We could go on with that. One of the things, of course, we're all going through this right now. That's why we're having this virtual conference, because the world experienced the pandemic that is COVID-19. But it's not the only shock. COP26 has just been concluded, and there's a lot of discussion around, around climate change and what this means, especially regarding global trade. What sort of, where do you think the role is of global trade agreements when it comes to trying to shore up resilience of the countries that are represented in those particular trading blocks? And Doug will just continue the conversation, and I'll start that with you.
Sure. No, I thank you. I think with AFCFTA, it's a beginning. And just like NAFTA was a beginning for US, Canada, Mexico, what's going to happen over the next 10, 20 years will evolve and change. And so I think the first step is let's work together. Let's get the systems in place. Let's bring Nigeria in. Let's get a lot of the other issues going. I think weaving climate change and how that the impact of that and having impact on that probably won't be in play for a while until a lot of these other systems come into place. In the case of in the US, NAFTA, now USMCA, there had started to become some of those agreements. Same with the CPTPP in the Pacific. There are elements of those agreements that have now started to address that. So I think it's an evolution. And so when we have this conversation in 10 years, probably AFCFTA will be saying, well, the next agreement will have these elements in it. In the meantime, entrepreneurs will move ahead. They'll find opportunities. They'll create products and services that make sense. And the governments will hopefully catch up with those and start to implement overall structures that help support more of their success. And so I would say they're related, but for AFCFTA, I think it's probably a little bit further down the road in terms of where the impact will be on that particular topic. There's a lot more other progress that's going to happen over the next several years.
So thank you for that, Doug. Sara, what are your thoughts around that? How can member states be more resilient to these different shocks?
So yeah, I would catch up on what Doug have said. It's first that I think that maybe trade agreements at the beginning, or provisions in generally when they were drafted in most of the agreements, not only in Africa, were not designed for changing circumstances or facing global crises. But having said that, I would say that evaluating the performance of several governments in the light of the past COVID pandemic, it's moderately okay with regards to there has been intentions from some governments to reread the text in an innovative way, and sometimes in order to find a solution. But also in some other ways, it shows the wise voice of the importance of reviewing agreements. In Africa, most of the agreement have a clause of reviewing the agreement every 5 years or something. So that's something that's good in favor of agreements not being as old and not being reviving and catching up with actually what's happening globally. I think that the agreements as such now has some provisions that helped us pass during the pandemic. If I would talk on trade facilitation aspect, I would say that there's the retrospective articles which allowed exporters to present their certificates after the export. There's a lot of raise and acceptance. Several countries have accepted digital certificates of origin or digital documents during the pandemic, and that has helped a lot of countries. Of course, we would say that surprisingly, there's the COMESA, the TFT, the tripartite, the African tripartite have actually started before in the pandemic discussing self-certification and self-digitalization of certificates of origin, which is actually very, very relevant to how to actually face such abrupt situation in the future. Of course, there's a lot of discussions now on defining essential goods, maybe putting lists for these essential goods that actually we would want to either exempt or provide specific trade facilitation procedures in times of crises. And maybe I would also catch up on what Olivier and Doc said, that maybe the key word and maybe the pandemic before the pandemic, we've always viewed trade in the view of numbers, in exports, imports. But maybe the pandemic helps us more to see a human face for that, in a manner that it needs, if you want to actually build back better or provide better outcome in future crises, probably we need agile steps for harmonization on regional level, and having more regional plans on directing investment and development cooperation in the right venues and to actually build the needed infrastructure. One last thing is that, and actually pointing out to the human face, is that maybe trade agreements and actually focusing on regional integration helps a lot for our continent in building the skills needed and creating more jobs, and that is what's actually needed from trade. I think that if we properly put our efforts in that, we could actually have a better future for the continent.
Thank you for that, Sara and Doug. And then I'm going to ask Olivier to give me his view in like 2 minutes so that we can wrap up. Olivier, what do you think about the role that these agreements can play when it comes to just trying to make member states a little bit more resilient?
Thanks a lot. Really, one thing when I see this is a huge opportunity that Africa is having on hand, and we need to be ready not to lose what we have in our hands. A lot of international business are looking for this opportunity to come and take advantage of that, but we have a lot of issues with our own system in terms of the process that SMEs go through in order to have their products ready to be exported. So the country's government need really to harmonize their system so that it can be easy and can be digitally accessible for anyone who want to export. The second is to really have a strong partnership with countries where they have kind of markets opportunities. Like when I look at Kenya or Uganda and South Sudan, we need to kind of really not only just businesses looking for their own opportunities, but countries stepping in and have that kind of bilateral agreements where this trade can be really facilitated in such a way that SMEs are getting opportunities. I can also see opportunities for the women voice coming out clearly to see. And this year we've been having a lot of discussion around opportunities for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, because gender was not really as such opportunity that was clearly stated in the policy. So, but how can we come out for all stakeholders who are looking to really advance the women in trade or the gender equality and social inclusion within the Africa Trade Agreement, so that the opportunity, once everything is working, women are not left behind this kind of opportunities. So that's what I can say, but also TFO-Canada really doing what we have to do in terms of building the capacity so that women and MSMEs can be ready when everything is starting to work well. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much to my panel. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Olivier. Of course, thank you to Anne and the Regal Group that has put together this conference, as well as all the sponsors and all the people who have joined us today and will continue to join us tomorrow. As we conclude with our session, I'd just like to say back to you some of the things that you pointed out, which I thought was really, really pertinent and things that we should keep in mind as we conclude this session. One of the things that you said, Doug, was that the issue of trade and transparency is something that is critical. It reminds me of what not Steve Covey, but his son said that I think he wrote a book called Business at the Speed of Trust. And it really just goes back to what you were saying, and how can you build that trust much faster? Is having transparent systems, having consistency in how things are done, but also being open to the opportunities that are there, and having a certain mindset that is entrepreneurial, where you're innovative in how things are done and how opportunities are explored. Sara, you talked to us about innovative interpretation of some of these agreements, because these they're living documents, and we find ourselves in the circumstances in which we're in. And unless countries work together to either renegotiate or interpret the text of what it is that they have, they do find themselves stuck sometimes. And we've seen that with what has happened during COVID. But as you also pointed out, the pandemic was also a great opportunity for us to think of trade with a human face. And I like that because it does build on the notion of building back better. It does build on what we've heard said before about having a people-centered recovery. So thank you for that particular insight, Sara. And Olivier, what you said about making sure that women are not left behind, and that whatever implementation it is that is taking place should be done with a gender lens. Because very often and very easily, you find that, especially within supply chains, women are sort of left out of the more complex parts of these supply chains, or on the trade end of these supply chains. They're okay for the production, for the cheaper labor, but then when it comes to actually benefiting and reaping the rewards of either more complex value addition or even services, you find that women are sometimes left behind. So I'm really happy to hear that this is something that is being deliberately looked at within TFO, and that it's something that you are very passionate about, and you continue to drive that gender agenda forward, and that is really, really appreciated. So thank you to all of you for taking the time, for giving us your insights. It's been fantastic. And I'm going to turn it over back to Anne so that we can go into the next session. And I'm hoping that we've caught up a little bit because we were a few minutes behind. But thank you again to our panel this afternoon.
All right, thank you, Wangechi, for moderating that session very, very well. It was quite engaging. Thank you, Doug, all the way from the States, Olivier representing Canada, and Sara in North Africa here in Egypt, for just sharing with us what you think are the global opportunities, because I always tell people it's about going beyond borders, right? So we are in Africa, there's opportunity on the continent, there's opportunity local, but we have to go beyond borders. And that is what the global trade is all about. And so I'm very happy that you are able to take time today to come in and share with us your insights. And I know a lot of people on this call, on this conference, got the information. Hopefully we'll be reaching out to you. I'm encouraging everyone, if you're not a member of the Global Chamber, please become a member. If you're in Kenya, you can reach out to me and I can be able to direct to the right people, because as business people, which I know majority of the people here, we want good business leads. We want to be able to trust that those businesses we're doing business with are legitimate businesses, that we will do trade with them, they will pay us, and we can build a relationship with them. And as Doug said, transparency and trade go hand in hand, because that builds trust. So thank you very much, Sara, Doug, Olivier, and Wangechi. Thank you very much. We will all be seeing you in 30 minutes at 4 o'clock. It's going to be our next panel. We continue talking about global trade and opportunities for African brands. We will bring in trade, development, and gender. So don't leave. What I would encourage you to do is take this time of this break to actually go to the virtual exhibition section, whereby you would be able to see companies that are doing business on the continent, and you will be able to see how we're using technology to share this information wherever you are. I'm in Nairobi, in Kenya, as you can see in the background, and I'm excited that I get to bring you into Nairobi, and hopefully next time it will be physical, but right now it's virtual. But with that, I want to thank you very much, and I hope you stay. Go ahead to the exhibition area, which just means you go back to the lobby. Instead of entering auditorium again, go to the exhibition on your right and be able to look at those virtual booths, and then come back at 4 p.m. East African time, and we get to continue more panel discussions about global opportunities for African businesses. Thank you, and we'll see you in a little while.